Welcome back to another Star Mini Gaming YouTube video. This is another, this kind of become, I guess, an unofficial topic of the week, it seems, where everyone in the YouTube community has really been talking about size of games in Age of Sigmar. And I wanted to put in, my own 2 cents. I've played other skirmish level games before, obviously. I mean, that's probably where most of my tabletop gaming experience comes into play, because, I would call, for example, HeroClix and the old Mech Warrior Age of Destruction game a skirmish level game. The Lord of the Rings game is a skirmish level game. So, and various other games like the old Wizards Pirates game, if you ever were familiar with that, they were sold in little booster packs similar to like a trading card game, but they were little punch-out ships that you could build. I played that for a little while. The Star Wars miniatures game, X-Wing, anyways, I've played several skirmish level games, and Age of Sigmar is a skirmish game. And what's good about Age of Sigmar that I feel like is also, something that was well done in the Star Wars miniatures game and in Lord of the Rings, is that they're games that are playable at any size. Some people, it seems like, of the older editions of Warhammer, kind of like the veteran guard of the game, have taken Age of Sigmar, and they really, apparently, a lot of people haven't really played a lot of other tabletop games in terms of miniatures. And so what was something I didn't realize was how common it was for people to try to take their old 8th edition classic Warhammer armies and basically port that over into Age of Sigmar, which that'll work. The system is built to where you can play that and it will function fine. There's not really like big rules problems and all, but you do have to take into account that to play something like that, it will take you longer. And let's just be honest, like, everything that I'm hearing from the classic Warhammer community has led me to one point: you're lazy if you played classic Warhammer, and at least it seems to be that way in terms of a tabletop gaming perspective. And let me explain that. What I simply mean by that is, if you played classic Warhammer, you were the spoiled group in the sense of you had the ease of movement. You had the big old movement trays, and you'd move your units across the battlefield. You didn't have to worry about, what formation am I putting my guys in the same sense. I mean, there was some of that, but not to the same degree as in a more free movement skirmish game. And movement was much quicker, and in some ways, not all, but it had its own complexities, but in some ways it was more simple to push a movement tray forward. In Age of Sigmar and other skirmish level games, you don't have that. And if you've played 40k for any amount of time, then Age of Sigmar is nothing new. The way that you move in 40k is very similar to how you move in Age of Sigmar. For someone like myself who's played lots of individual miniatures games, like with on the skirmish level, like the Lord of the Rings and HeroClix and Mech Warrior, Age of Sigmar and 40k are a breeze for me, because I am used to playing games where you literally measure for every single model. In Age of Sigmar, that's not really necessary. You can take your lead one and move him forward, and then the rest of your squad can move up to him without exceeding it. Now, that's of course in a friendlier environment where you're not super concerned about it, about exact measurements, but so long as you're not moving past the lead model and really not jumping people ahead in their formation to where they're gaining additional movement, if you're basically keeping the squad in roughly the same position as it was before, just slid forward, then it's not a problem, and movement is still quick. And what I'm surprised by is how so many people in the community seem to be saying, like, well, the ideal game for Age of Sigmar seems to be like 50 models, 40, 50 models, and I'm quite happy. I've played Age of Sigmar several times now, and almost every time, except for my first couple of games when I didn't have the models, I ended up bringing probably close to 75, 80 plus models for my army. And sure, that's nowhere near as large as 8th edition type armies, and if you are playing a game significantly larger than what I am, then sure, it's going to be a significant time investment. But if you're going to play a very large game for any system, then you understand that. Like, increasing the size of the armies increases the length of time that you're playing in the game. It does bring additional other things into it, but as certain, kinds of like tactical flexibilities within that game that you don't have in a smaller scale skirmish. But of course, the smaller scale skirmish has its own unique tactical aspects. So the point I want to make is there is no right size to play in Age of Sigmar. Whatever it is that you enjoy playing, and understand that, if you're playing and you're used to 8th edition, yes, the movement phase is going to take longer. Yes, you may be somewhat discouraged from taking larger blocks of units because you're used to literally being able to push them all forward at one time. You're going to have to move the models individually to a degree. But that's just the nature of the game. And honestly, like, I enjoy for me how quickly Age of Sigmar flows. Like I said before, I'm used to so many other games, like in HeroClix, for example, where you basically have to count out the squares that you're going, for your movement purposes. And in the Star Wars Miniatures game, it was the same kind of like grid-based system. And for the Lord of the Rings game, it was there are no squads. You move an individual model. So really, in the grand scheme of games out there, excuse me, in the grand scheme of games out there, Age of Sigmar flows quite quickly. And it's just getting used to how to do it quickly. It's not hard to move a 70 model, army through your entire movement phase in a minute or two. Like, it really doesn't take that long once you're used to how to do it and the ways to do it quickly and to kind of save yourself a little bit of time. And the rule set for Age of Sigmar, that's one of the big things too. The rule set for Age of Sigmar scales well. It's one of those games that the game doesn't break when you bring massive armies, and it doesn't break whenever you bring really small armies. In that way, I think it's superior to 40k, because in very small games, I feel like 40k really struggles. But obviously 40k, as it gets larger and larger and larger, the rules don't suddenly break when you have more models on the table. But that's my thoughts on that one. I just want to throw it out there. I'm honestly kind of tired of hearing the old guard complain that movement takes too long. I'm like, you literally went from the easiest movement system in any majorly played war game to one that's a little bit more difficult and takes a little bit more time, but is still very much more on the easier end of the spectrum. But that's my thoughts on that one. Until next time, this is James, and happy gaming.